I never thought my greatest talent would become my heaviest burden. Growing up, I was always Alex the responsible, Alex the dependable, Alex the problem solver. But now, at 27, those labels have twisted into shackles that keep me bound to a cycle I never asked to be part of. My sister Emily is 30 years old, 3 years my senior, yet somehow decades behind in maturity. She floats through life like a dandelion seed, landing wherever the wind takes her, with no regard for what, or who, she might be crushing beneath her. I've watched her cycle through jobs the way most people cycle through Netflix shows. 2 weeks at the cafe downtown, 3 months at the department store, 6 weeks answering phones somewhere. Each ending with the same story: they didn't appreciate her, the manager had it out for her, the hours weren't fair. Meanwhile, I put myself through college working doubles, built a career from the ground up, and saved enough for a modest apartment that feels like a sanctuary, except when my phone rings with her number. "Alex, I'm in a bit of a situation," she said last month, her voice carrying that practiced tremble I've come to recognize as the prelude to a request. The landlord's being completely unreasonable about the rent. I mean, I told him I'd have it next week, but he's threatening eviction. Can you just help me out? Just this once. Just this once. The same phrase she used when she needed first and last month's deposit on the apartment before this one. And the one before that. The same words when her car broke down, when she maxed out her credit cards, when she needed to pay back someone I'd never even heard of. And every time, my parents' voices echo in my head: "She's your sister, Alex. Family helps family. You're doing so well, surely you can spare some to help Emily get back on her feet." Back on her feet. As if she'd ever stood firmly on them in the first place. Last night, over our monthly family dinner, Emily announced she'd quit her latest job because her boss didn't respect her creative input at the copy shop. Before I could even process what this meant, my mother turned to me with that expectant look. "Emily could stay with you while she figures things out, couldn't she, Alex? Your place has that spare room." I felt my throat tighten as familiar resentment surged through my veins. My spare room, the one I use as a home office for the extra freelance work I take on to build my savings. The savings that inevitably get drained to rescue Emily from her latest crisis. I looked around the table, at my father avoiding eye contact, at my mother's pleading expression, at Emily's practiced look of vulnerability, and realized with crushing clarity, I wasn't the family problem solver. I was the family sacrifice. The dining room at my parents' house has always felt smaller than it actually is, claustrophobic in a way that has nothing to do with square footage. Tonight, the chicken parmesan my mother spent hours preparing sits heavy in my stomach as I watch the familiar choreography unfold. My father clears his throat, my mother refills wine glasses nobody asked to be topped off, and Emily picks at her food with the practiced disinterest of someone waiting for their cue. "So, Alex," my father begins, his voice casual in that deliberate way that immediately sets off warning bells in my head. "Your mother and I have been talking." I brace myself. In my family, that phrase is never followed by anything good. "Emily's having a bit of a rough patch," my mother chimes in, reaching over to pat my sister's hand. Emily responds with a perfectly timed sigh. "Just temporary, of course." "Of course," I echo, taking a larger sip of wine than intended. My father leans forward, elbows on the table, a posture my mother would scold anyone else for. "We think it makes perfect sense for Emily to stay with you for a while. Just until she gets back on her feet." The way he says it, not as a question but as a statement of fact, makes my blood simmer. I watch Emily's face carefully arrange itself into grateful relief, a performance she's perfected over years of practice. "Your spare room is just sitting there," my mother adds, as if my apartment's floor plan is communal property to be allocated by committee. "And you're always saying how quiet it is. Some company would be nice, wouldn't it?" A laugh nearly escapes me. The spare room that hasn't existed for 3 weeks. The apartment I gave notice on 22 days ago. The keys to my new place, tucked safely in my pocket, feel like a secret weapon. I suppose that could work, I hear myself say, my voice a masterclass in feigned consideration. I watch relief wash over their faces, my parents, who raised me to be the responsible one but never the respected one. That's settled then, my father declares, visibly relieved that the family problem has once again been neatly packaged and handed to me. Internally, I'm already rehearsing how this will play out. The confusion when Emily shows up with her suitcases to find strangers living in my apartment. The frantic calls I won't answer for the first day. The realization that for once, I've stepped out of my assigned role. When were you thinking? I ask, my voice pleasant, cooperative, the good son they've always counted on. This weekend would be ideal, my mother says, already mentally checking this problem off her list. I nod thoughtfully, taking another sip of wine to hide my smile. 3 decades of being the family safety net, the designated fixer, the reliable one they could manipulate with guilt and obligation, and they never once considered I might learn to play their game. I'll make sure everything's ready, I promise, feeling the weight of their manipulation lighten with each word. Not because I'm giving in, but because for the first time, I'm taking back control. The moment of reckoning arrived with the predictable precision of a Swiss watch. I watched from across the street, leaning against a lamppost with a coffee in hand, as my parents' silver sedan pulled up to my old apartment building. Emily emerged from the back seat, her face a portrait of entitlement as she surveyed what she assumed would be her temporary sanctuary. 2 suitcases and 3 designer bags, always the essentials with her. My father popped the trunk, my mother adjusted her scarf, and they began the procession toward the building's entrance. I counted silently, 1, 2, 3, and right on cue, my phone vibrated. Alex, where are you? We're at your apartment, my mother's voice carried that familiar note of impatience. I'm out, I replied, taking a leisurely sip of my coffee. Is there something you needed? Don't be difficult. We're here with Emily and her things. The doorman won't let us up without you. I smiled into the phone. That would be because I don't live there anymore. The silence that followed was exquisite, a precious moment of recalibration as their carefully constructed plan began to crumble. What do you mean you don't live there? My father had taken the phone now, his voice sharp with disbelief. I mean exactly that. I gave notice nearly a month ago. Handed in the keys last week. I watched them through the glass doors of the lobby, huddled around the phone like conspirators whose plot had been discovered. The new tenants move in tomorrow, actually. Why wouldn't you tell us something like that? My mother again, her voice pitched higher now. The same reason you wouldn't ask before deciding I'd house Emily. Assumptions are dangerous things. I could see Emily's face contorting with frustration, her gestures becoming more animated as the reality of the situation sank in. My father ran a hand through his thinning hair, his universal sign of mounting stress. Where are you living now? He demanded, as if knowledge of my address was his birthright. Somewhere with exactly 1 bedroom, I replied, feeling a strange lightness spread through my chest. And a very strict no-guest policy. Alex, this isn't funny. Your sister needs help. And I need boundaries. Funny how we never talk about that. So what are we supposed to do now? The desperation in my mother's voice might have moved me once. The same thing you'd do if I didn't exist, figure it out. I paused, watching them through the glass. I'm not the family's emergency exit anymore. I ended the call as my father began another protest. Standing there, watching them gesticulate and argue on the sidewalk, surrounded by Emily's excessive luggage, I felt something I hadn't experienced in their presence for years, peace. The weight of obligation lifted from my shoulders with each step I took in the opposite direction. 2 days of blessed silence passed before the inevitable confrontation arrived. I was nursing a cup of black coffee in my new apartment, a minimalist haven on the 12th floor of a security building across town, when my phone erupted with notifications. 6 missed calls. 11 text messages. All from my family, escalating from confusion to demands to thinly veiled threats. We've been driving around for an hour, my mother's voicemail hissed. Your sister is exhausted. Stop this childish game and tell us where you've moved. I set my phone down without responding and continued unpacking a box of books. The silence felt almost sacred, until my building security system chimed. On the intercom screen, I saw them, my father's jaw clenched in familiar anger, my mother's arms crossed tight against her chest, and Emily, dabbing at non-existent tears while clutching her designer purse. How did you find me? I asked through the speaker. Your company directory, my father replied, as if breaking into my sanctuary was some clever detective work he should be praised for. Now buzz us up. We've got Emily's things in the car. I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. No. Alex, this isn't a negotiation. My mother's face pressed closer to the camera. Emily needs a place to stay while she sorts things out. We've already explained this. And I've already declined. My voice was steady, calmer than I felt. Please leave. They didn't. Instead, they somehow convinced another resident to let them into the building. The sharp knock on my door came minutes later. When I opened it, they pushed past me, my father dragging one of Emily's suitcases, my mother already scanning the apartment with critical eyes. This will do, she declared, as if her approval mattered. The sofa pulls out, doesn't it? You need to leave, I said quietly. Don't be ridiculous, Emily snapped, already placing her cosmetics bag on my kitchen counter. Where else am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. My father stepped toward me, his face flushed. After everything we've done for you. I'm calling the police, I interrupted, phone already in hand. You're trespassing. The silence that followed was absolute. They stared at me as if I'd transformed into a stranger before their eyes. Perhaps I had. You wouldn't dare, my mother whispered. I met her gaze and dialed. When the dispatcher answered, I calmly reported unwanted intruders in my home who refused to leave. My family watched in stunned disbelief as I gave my address and requested officers. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, my family had shifted from shock to bargaining to fury. The officers, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a younger man with a clipboard, listened to both sides before turning to me. It's your residence, the female officer said simply. You have the right to decide who stays and who goes. As my family was escorted out, Emily's caustic parting words, you'll regret this when you have nobody, hung in the air. But watching the door close behind them, I felt only relief. The apartment was quiet again, but different now, consecrated by the most powerful word I'd ever learned to say, no. It's been 3 days since the police escorted my family from my apartment. 3 days of something I haven't felt in years, peace. My phone buzzes constantly, a digital shrine to their rage. I scroll through the notifications without opening them, watching their descent from indignation to fury to desperate manipulation. You ungrateful little, my father's voicemail cuts off mid-insult, the automated voice limit more merciful than he ever was. My mother's messages are longer, masterful symphonies of guilt wrapped in concern, we're just worried about you, Alex. This isn't like you. What will people think? Emily's texts are the most revealing. You've ruined everything, one reads. Another, Mom and Dad can't afford to keep supporting me. Is that what you wanted? The truth in those words feels like vindication. I take a deep breath and do something I should have done years ago, I block them all. The silence afterward isn't empty, it's full of possibility. My apartment feels different now. The spaces they invaded have been reclaimed, scrubbed clean of their presence. I move through the rooms feeling lighter, noticing how the morning light creates patterns on the hardwood floors, how the city sounds below form a rhythm I find comforting rather than isolating. At work, I accept a project I'd been avoiding, one requiring travel and extended hours. You sure? My boss asks, eyebrows raised in surprise. You usually can't with your family situation. The smile that spreads across my face feels foreign. Not an issue anymore, I tell him. The words taste like freedom. In the evenings, I reconnect with friends who'd slowly disappeared from my life, squeezed out by the constant emergencies and obligations my family created. Over drinks, I tell fragments of my story, testing the waters of my decision. So I had them removed by police, I admit to my oldest friend, Michael, expecting judgment. Instead, he leans forward, eyes steady. "The only thing I'm wondering is why it took you so long," he says. "Some family ties aren't meant to be preserved, man. They're meant to be severed." Later that night, I stand on my balcony overlooking the city lights. For years, I'd been treading water with anchors tied to my legs, my sister's manufactured crises, my parents' enabling demands, my own misplaced sense of obligation. I'd mistaken sacrifice for love, obligation for family. I think about the word family, how it should represent support, not servitude, love, not leverage. My phone remains silent now, the digital umbilical cord finally cut. Somewhere across town, they're plotting their next attempt. Perhaps they're already replacing me with another willing host for Emily's parasitic lifestyle. But for the first time in my adult life, that's not my problem to solve. I close my eyes and breathe in the night air. This, I realize, is what it feels like to be reborn.